Chapter 5. Certissima. Beyond the door lay a tunnel that extended a dozen meters before dropping down a hexagonal shaft. Webb braced herself against the wall of the passage and peered down. The shaft was about 3 meters across and choked with boulders. A soft, blue light cast an eerie glow up from its depths. She felt Marwazi peer over her shoulder. Her pulse quickened, not entirely from the discovery. "What do you think this is?" He held his scanner out over the shaft. Its lights were harsh in the near darkness. "These rocks are of a different material than the ruins." Webb checked the ceiling. It ran solid and smooth with no signs of distress. "This wasn't a cave-in. These were moved here." "My conclusion as well." He turned her way. The blue glow lined his jaw with starlight. "But who would do that, and why? This is quite exciting." "Shit, yeah, it is. My hands are shaking." She made a few fists to get her pulse under control. Took a few deep breaths the way Frankie always told her to. Don't overwhelm yourself. One thing at a time. Pardon my language, by the way. I was thinking along the same lines. Do you think the flagstaff put these here? Can't say for sure, but I wouldn't bet on it. If they wanted to plug the shaft, blasting the ceiling's the easiest way. These were brought from elsewhere. Teleported? Unlikely. Not with all this interference. We're lucky our scanners are even working now. She ran hers above the pit. None of these rocks are larger than about half the diameter of the shaft, but still, the effort involved in moving them by hand would have been... What is it? They're soundly arranged. Structurally so, almost engineered. Look. She kick-pushed a smaller stone. It didn't budge. Good balance points, consistent weight distribution, room enough between the stones for ventilation, and solid as a rock wall. Marwazi stooped to shove out a rock. What does this mean? It means whoever did this knew what they were doing. They clearly wanted to seal the shaft. But they didn't. His silhouette turned her way. Not entirely. She pointed towards the far side of the pit, where the blue light glowed with the greatest intensity. Marwazi clicked on his light and aimed where she pointed. A gap in the stones lit up. A meter-wide shaft within the shaft. Seems they missed a spot. Webb shook her head. No, that's deliberate. The mat of boulders screamed broken angle, especially given her hangover. But Webb's curiosity got the better of her. Hold the light out if you don't mind. I can't believe I'm doing this. What are you doing? Can't get a good look from here. She stepped gingerly onto the first boulder. It was porous enough to provide a good grip. Be careful, technician. We have names, Doc. She hopped to the next stone. Webb's fine. Fix me up if I break something? Seems only fair, considering I shot you. Deal. She skipped across the topmost boulders and peered down the gap. It plunged at least 20 meters to a polished floor. While the arrangement of stones ringing it was hardly uniform, the width of the shaft remained consistent, as did the glow from below. She let out a low whistle. What do you see? An access shaft. Made of stacked stone, but she'd been through enough maintenance hatches to know what she was looking at. A way down through the wider shaft they blocked. They? I mean, somebody did it. And they balanced these stones with mechanical precision while leaving an effective ladder to another level. Marwazi leaned forward as far as he could without stepping over the shaft. Why leave access if the point is to block the shaft? Maybe they were just trying to narrow it. A chill ran over her skin. Or keep something from getting through. There's that day again. Nice alliteration, Doc. Dr. Marwazi will do. I think we should start back. This is fascinating, but as you point out, the ruins have been interfering with our instruments. If we get lost or hurt, there's no way to call for aid, and we've already been called to reconvene. Webb looked down the eerie blue shaft. If she went back, she'd never find out what was causing that glow, or who stacked these stones. Discoveries, the big ones, ruins and races and the like, were the purview of officers, as were the accolades and book deals and naming rights that flowed from them. Leaving now would be intentionally waking herself mid-dream. There'd be no slipping back into it, and she'd always be left wondering. Don't you want to see what's down there? She heard his weight shift. Of course I do. We're literally right here, Doc. Marwazi, sorry. We're hardly equipped for it. No, but we've got a chance for real discovery here. She'd never had that. She hoped she didn't sound like she was whining. She scanned below. Her device groaned in protest. I'm getting a ton of magnetic interference. More so than from above? He sounded closer. Way more. You know, that might have been what made my personal device wig out. She couldn't call it a cog finder without raising eyebrows. We should at least find out what's causing that glow. We can flag this point for further exploration. If it's electronic, what's its power source? If it's not, well, what is it? She was thinking out loud now. Walk through it. Everything has a mechanical explanation. We didn't pick up any tech from the ship's scans, or heat for that matter. Light equals heat even in low amounts. We should have picked up the heat. Why was there no heat? Marwazi shook his head. You're going down, aren't you? She had already descended halfway. There are natural handholds. I mean, not natural. These stones are arranged, but still, it's an easy climb. Technician. Webb. I'm just getting enough for a full report. The chief likes it when we're thorough. She alighted quietly at the bottom and turned to find herself in a chamber of stars. The passage below was hexagonal, carved through the stone at the same width as the shaft. Glowing blue streaks in patterns she couldn't identify ran the length of the tunnel in veins and dots and whorls. It was as though the passage had been wallpapered with a Van Gogh sky. You really want to see this? A grunt of effort, a slap of boots on stone, and the doctor ducked into the passage. Oh my. He straightened, gaped with the slack-jawed wonder of a child seeing their first stars. Oh my. Oh my, oh my. He looked ready to cry, or to dance. Unmade, like his ego had dissolved in the presence of ineffable splendor. He put his hand to his heart, a gesture Webb repeated. Whatever happened above, wherever she wound up, she'd have this little moment, this glimpse into the soul of her crush. Beautiful. He nodded. He thought she meant the patterns, which she also did, but not exclusively. I'm no expert, but it almost looks like bioluminescence. Biological light? She wiped at a streak of it with her sleeve. The color didn't smudge. Like the deep-sea nightmare fish? Not just those, and not just in the sea. He scanned a particularly dense patch of color. Fireflies, glowworms. Though in the latter case, it's used to attract prey. They dangle sticky nets of it to ensnare insects. And those examples are of chemical reactions, ones that consume their fuel over time. I thought you said you weren't an expert. He slapped his scanner. I can't get a reading. Interference is too strong. We should get a sample for Phillips. The ship's head of xenobiology, Baron Freakbaum, to the crew. She had never had cause or desire to learn why. We could try scanning some on the surface. The interference wouldn't be as strong there. I didn't bring my sample case. He sounded apologetic. If I'd known, if I'd suspected. Life signs were negative. They stood there in the near dark, faces lit by softly glowing streaks of mystery. Their eyes found each other. They shared a smile. Thank you for coming down, said Webb. I'm really glad I got to see this. She left out, with you. As am I, said Marwazi. Thanks for taking the initiative. Do you really want to go back? I really don't, he said. But protocol is protocol, and the longer we linger, the more likely a search party comes after us. One not in a pleasant mood. Seriously, I don't want to get court-martialed. She toed the floor. They're just looking for excuse to come down on me with both feet. Marwazi tapped his badge. It spat out static. He tapped it off again. With the comms down, we hardly could have gotten the message to reconvene. Webb shifted her feet. Except I was sent to tell you. And you did. A smile crept up his face. And then I enlisted you for a side mission. Let's at least see where this tunnel goes. Webb returned his grin. Aye, aye, Doctor. While we're here, just the two of us, call me Harun. Her whole body smiled. The passage turned to open up into a much larger chamber, also hexagonal, with cryptic bioluminescence swirling up its vaulted ceiling. Their glow wasn't enough to light a space so large, and the heart of the chamber lay dark. Could you share your light? Webb asked him. Marwazi handed it to her. I don't think it's enough for the chamber. You'd think. She popped the bulb out of its housing. Little engineering trick. She set the light to diffuse, clicked on hover mode, and tossed it into the chamber. The bulb traced a high, gentle arc through the air before plowing into the floor with the grace of a drunken star. Marwazi raised an eyebrow. Was it supposed to do that? It most certainly was not. Webb was glad it was too dark to see her flush. Is this still part of the trick? It's supposed to... It was going to hang up there and Never mind. She retrieved the bulb and held it up. To Webb's eye, the room was obviously engineered, though whoever had done so had taken pains to preserve the natural contours of the cave. More hexagonal tunnels snaked off in different directions, but none had nearly as much bioglow as the one they'd come down. Flat areas had been carved around lumps of raised rock on the floor. Near those, other stones of different material had been set on stony bases, moved here for unclear purposes. Webb scanned the nearest lump. Her instruments went haywire. Whoa! What have you found? An overloaded scanner. Hang on. She tugged a metal switch off the scanner and dropped it in the air. It snapped to the side of the stone. Just what I thought. Which was? Lodestone. Magnetite. His face was blank. Natural magnets. She climbed over a mound of brown stone to examine a lump that didn't match the rest of the chamber. The switch stuck to it as well. These others have been moved here. Look, even in this light, you can see there's sediment. The layers are different. Someone's been collecting magnetite and bringing it to a chamber that already had a lot of it. Is that what kept the bulb from hovering? No, that was gravity. Such cheek. Thank you. But yeah, the magnets probably knocked it out of the air. Mawazi stepped back to get a wider look. These are arranged in a pattern, in concentric hexagons, and... Oh. My. Webb turned the bulb towards the doctor. It found him staring at a stump of stone Webb had mistaken for a tall lump of rock. With the light right, she could see its angular contours and stony limbs. Marwazi turned his head her way, but not his eyes. What do you make of this? Webb circled around to its front. It was a statue, glittering with metallic pinpricks, of a creature she'd never seen. A xeno-octoped with slim, armored limbs, slightly shorter than her, with 6 legs folded beneath it. It looked like a great stony insect sitting in repose, like some thoughtful hybrid of ant and mantis. It wasn't a perfect comparison. Its abdomen was not separate from its thorax, and Webb saw no wings. Its forelimbs, longer and thicker than its legs, were raised skyward, and its head was missing. Wow, said Webb. Now that is ugly. I'll bet not even the captain would have sex with that. Marwazi checked the statue's neck. It appears to have been decapitated, sliced clean through. He framed it with his datapad and started recording. Webb scanned the statue. Her device blipped and flatlined again. Magnetite, possibly solid, and certainly powerful. It was trying to pull the structural mesh in her lungs right out of her chest. A wave of dizziness hit her. Her thoughts started to drift. She put a hand to her head, as if she could sweep them back in, but it was like fighting the tide with a broom. Her thoughts went from the falling starlight of her bulb, to the starlight outside the neons, to looking out over so many worlds, which wasn't accurate. She never used a planet-side view. And then, she was falling out the Neos airlock and drifting towards a sickly yellow planet until she shook herself back to the present. She wobbled and had to sit. Webb? Marwazi appeared above her. Are you all right? Yeah. She had to blink a couple of times to put herself back in the chamber. Just, really disoriented all of a sudden. Vertigo out of nowhere. He clicked on a light pen. Let me check your eyes. She suddenly felt cold and scared. I think we should go. She rose in a turn towards the tunnel, and her spine turned to ice. The stone she'd climbed over was gone. No, not gone. Standing, looking at her, at them. A xeno, a hulking shadow the shape of the statue but towering above, a line of black orbs ribbing its wedge-shaped head. Eyes like a spider's, each the size of Seven's cricket ball. On reflex, Webb switched her bulb to specular and aimed the beam at its head. The creature's eyes went from black to silver. It didn't turn away. She couldn't scream. She couldn't breathe. But she could run. So she did, scrabbling breathlessly as though through a nightmare, as if she could outpace the thought that they'd just discovered exactly why the shaft had been sealed. She'd never run so fast, or with so little attention towards what lay in her path. She flew up the first chimney and then the stairs, her pulse thundering, her lungs straining to pull enough oxygen out of the air, and streaked across the sands inside the ruins. She didn't even hear the sandstorm outside until it knocked her off her feet. She shielded eyes blinded by the light with bloody fingers torn in her scramble up the shaft. The world swam around her as her senses reoriented, and she nearly vomited again. Running for your life was an inappropriate hangover activity, especially when the lizard part of your brain wouldn't stop screaming. Marwazi dropped to all fours beside her. Webb guessed he didn't do much sprinting in the infirmary. "You okay?" He nodded, eyes on the sand, and giggled. "Did you see that?" She looked back towards the ruins. No towering, angular Xeno was following them out. No way it was getting through that stack of stones. Not quickly, at least. She knew that intellectually, but tried telling that to her amygdala. Marwazi, still giggling, was on his feet now and pulling her to hers. "Did you see that?" "Of course you did. What a marvel. What an absolute marvel. God, he's great. I nearly pissed myself." Webb could only nod. The pounding of her pulse wasn't allowing for much speech yet. A clutch of soldiers emerged through the sands. Marwazi spotted them and waved for their attention. "Here!" Lord. Webb slumped when she saw who was leading them. Blackwell marched up with fists balled at his sides. "Bilson said I'd find you here." So the baby-faced Armstrong had ratted her out, and after she'd given him that blanket. "Sir, I was relaying the order to regroup." "That order went out an hour ago." He gave Marwazi a dirty look. "The rest of your team arrived shortly thereafter." "Yes." Marwazi grinned back giddily. "You won't believe what we found." "I'm surprised at you, Doctor. You know our protocols when the comms go down." "There were extenuating circumstances, I assure you." "Sir, under these very ruins, we encountered the most incredible..." "Under? You went beyond mission parameters?" He glared sidelong at Webb. "Where'd you get that idea?" "We stumbled upon the Great Chamber, an inhabited chamber further underground. Some sort of den for a truly massive creature." Blackwell was nodding. Too quickly. Not so much listening as waiting for his turn to speak. "Maybe you saw something. Maybe you were jumping at shadows. Live scans were negative." "Conventional scans?" Webb pulled the cog finder from her belt. "But I've been fiddling with this personal device. It lit up like a holiday tree. I thought it was a glitch, but is that a recording device?" Blackwell eyed the cog finder. "What? No, it's a..." "I recorded it," said Marwazi, "with my datapad, which is..." He patted his uniform. "Oh dear. It's illegal to record officers exercising their duty." "It's not a recorder," said Webb. "It's a... well..." She couldn't call it what it was without incriminating herself. "Here." Marwazi held out his datapad and pulled up the footage. "You see this? This was a statue in the chamber, much smaller than the creature itself." The end of his sentence was lost to a burst of winds and stinging sands. Just as quick as it had come, the storm abated and retreated into the sky, leaving them in a suddenly calm and quiet column of air. Blackwell took Marwazi's datapad. "That's a statue, Doctor." "Yes." The grin finally fell from his face. "I just said that. This was before we saw the creature. It was huge, possibly 5 meters tall." "I'm seeing no creature here." "I didn't get footage of it, I'm afraid." "You saw a statue, then you saw its shadow on the wall and flipped your lid." He slapped the pad back in Marwazi's hand. "I would have expected steadier nerves from a senior officer." "There was more than one, though." Webb slapped the side of the cog finder to knock the sand from its recesses. "There was?" said Marwazi. "On my non-recorder, if you'll just let me fire this up." Blackwell narrowed his eyes. "Is that an engineering scanner?" Webb froze. "It's the frame of one." "Which you got where?" Webb straightened. "I built it out of salvaged parts, and I don't appreciate the implication." "Check yourself, technician." "If I check its serial number, will I find this one missing?" When she didn't reply, he motioned for her to hand it over. When she didn't do that, a soldier wrenched it from her hands. "Hey! That's mine!" "Could we please," implored Marwazi, "keep talking about the giant xenoanthropod?" "Engineering scanner," Blackwell confirmed. He tapped a few keys, and it doesn't even work. "Cuffer." Webb could either scream or chuckle, so she went with the option less likely to get her punched. "Hey, Doc, maybe you want to start recording again?" "Tag their section," Blackwell told a soldier. "There's an artifact down there. We should retrieve it." "Sir!" called a distant voice. Blackwell turned to see a red shirt running towards them. Yolanda 8, Webb noted, looking even paler and more shaken than usual. She ran up to Blackwell, clutching an armful of broken wheat stalks. The lieutenant commander eyed her. "Yes?" Sir, the comms are still down and I need someone to look at this. At what? She held out the wheat. Agriculture is not my department. You two. He pointed from a pair of soldiers to Webb. Take her back to the shuttle. Keep her there. The rest of you are with me. But, sir, I... 8 balked when she saw Webb cuffed. Webb waved. Hey. 8 recovered quickly. Sir, we figured out why the stocks were broken. Yes, well done. Put it in your report, and we're walking. He strode off towards the new cornfield, a half a kilometer distant. Marwazi looked an apology to Webb as the soldiers led her away. I'll take this up with the captain. I'll put in a good word for you, don't worry. We will discuss this again. He fell in line behind Blackwell. 8 looked like she couldn't decide who to follow. This is important. I believe you, Webb called over her shoulder. Who do I take it to? Your superior. That's all you really can do. But, 8 slumped. Nobody listens to me. You're just getting that? She meant it as a joke, but it felt meaner than she'd intended. Whatever. You grew calluses quick in the service. The cuffs chafed, but Dewey would spring her once she's confirmed the scanner wasn't stolen. Good luck. I can't help you. Last day. One she'd be spending at least part of in the cell. She wondered if Dr. Marwazi would visit. No, not Dr. Marwazi. Haroon. She grinned despite the cuffs. Blackwell found Seagrave with the other senior officers at the edge of the new cornfield. He also found him pale. The captain gave them a curt nod and turned to the knot of officers. Now that we're all here, Captain, began Marwazi. Nothing in the ruins. Sivos bit into an ear of sweet corn. Just tunnels on tunnels. No leads as to where the ship went down, said Osai. No luck in establishing substratospheric communication either. I don't think we should stop trying, though. These storms have to blow off eventually. Seagrave nodded languidly, turned to Marwazi. Took your sweet time, Doctor. Captain, Marwazi stepped around Blackwell. My team and I should say, encountered an enormous non-humanoid xeno in our section. By all signs, intelligent. The officers eyed one another. Sivos picked corn from his teeth. Before Blackwell could speak, the captain asked, Where? In the catacombs beneath the ruins. It was truly massive. Here. He played his footage for the officers. It looked like this. Some manner of great arthropod, crustacean, or maybe insectoid. We didn't get close enough to tell. That looks like a statue, said the captain. It is, said Blackwell. This is, yes, said Marwazi. We found it in a shrine of sorts, a space filled with decorations and magnetite, both natural and transplanted. Lieutenant! A hysterical technician, a damn agrotech again, ran up to Winesboro, who was hanging in his usual spot near the back. Please, this can't wait! Technician, are we not clearly in a meeting? Blackwell bellowed at her. Short as she was, she still managed to shrink and hiccup. You said to take it to my superior. The captain set one hand to his stomach and the other on Blackwell's shoulder. Wino, get your tech under control. I got this. Winesboro took her aside. He hadn't taken more than a couple of steps before she shoved the wheat stalks into his hands and pointed frantically back at the broken field. Whatever she said lit a fire under his ass. Winesboro broke into a sprint and ran back towards the field with her. That must have been some important wheat, said the captain. Everyone but Sivos laughed. I'd never seen Wino move that fast. Neither have I. Sivos kept his eyes on the wheat field. Let's wrap this up and get back upstairs, said Seagrave. Captain, I request permission to return to my section of the ruins with the larger team, said Marwazi. And security. Denied. We'll continue the search for the flagstaff from the bridge. Did you at least tag the statue? I sent a soldier to find it, said Blackwell. Good, said Seagrave. At least today wasn't a total loss. Captain! Marwazi seemed equally befuddled and agitated. We are so greatly downplaying the magnitude of this moment. Yes. Seagrave dismissed that with a wave. I'll send a team to tag and cage whatever critter you think you saw down there. You clearly found something. He squinted at the doctor's datapad. Shame the head is missing. I wonder what it looked like. An alarmed shout split the air. Everyone looked towards each other and then towards the ruins. There, atop a low rise, a child-sized silver ant-like creature regarded them with its wedge-shaped head. Like that, said the doctor.